Hey, Anna, you know that Tom Collins guy?
No, I don't know him.
Oh, well, he seems to know you. He's talking all kinds of smack about you right now. He said you're like a super lame-o.
He said what?
Oh yeah, no, he said that. He also said that you're doo-doo head and like totally not cool and I mean all kinds of stuff.
Where is he?
Oh yeah, no, totally. He's in Dick's bar right now. I'm absolutely standing right outside of there. Just stepped out to call you. That's where I am for sure. And yeah, he's in there going like crazy right now.
I'm gonna get that son of a
Hello, and welcome to Shaking and Sipping. This is the show where we shake, or today, build in the glass, a cocktail or other mixed drink, sip it, and talk about it just a little bit. We're continuing to work through our list of the IBA's official classic cocktails to see how they stack up and how the IBA presents them. We are in the unforgettable section, and this week's unforgettable is, well, it's some sort of Collins. IBA is going to have this one as a John Collins, but we're going to have to talk about that just a little bit. So you might be wondering what that cold open was about moments ago. We will get there very soon. Let's go through a bit of the history of this drink and then we'll talk about its variants and what it can do. So there was a theater impresario who moved to London in the early 19th century and he managed something called the Garrick Club, and there were a bunch of famous folks, actors and noblemen and all sorts of people hung out there. He had been a big gin drinker and a big punch drinker from way back, and at some point his club created some sort of a gin punch. His head waiter at the time was called John Collins, and John Collins went on to make some version of it, which became famous. Now, we have no recipes or write-ups from that time. We just know that people called the drink after John Collins. That drink continued getting famous from when we first hear of it and see anything of it in print in 1830. By sometime in the 1850s or early 1860s, it had made its way to North America. It shows up in Montreal at somewhere called Dolly's, I believe, and we have that for sure by 1864. Story generally goes that British Army officers or Navy officers brought the drink with them, or the want for the drink with them across the ocean sometime in that period. It then made its way down into New York, and by the 70s, the 1870s, it was a popular drink in New York as well. However, when it shows up in Jerry Thomas's book, which we love talking about, for example, in 1876, it's no longer called a John Collins. It's called a Tom Collins. And that brings us to the cold open from moments ago. This was the most exciting thing to do in 1874. It's known as the Great Tom Collins Hoax, and the most fun you could have was walk into a bar, rile someone up, and say that Tom Collins was talking smack about them somewhere, and then get them to chase off after the non-existent Tom Collins. Sometimes that would be the end of the prank, but often someone at whatever location you sent them to would be aware that this prank existed, and so they would join right in and say, oh yeah, Tom Collins, he just went down to this other bar. He's down at the docks, and keep them going a little bit further, and that apparently was just great fun. So that was a major hoax that lasted for about 2 years, 74, 75. And so by 76, when it shows up in Thomas's book, as well as other sources soon after, it's likely that familiarity of that name in the world, its in vogue status, is what brought that there. Now, also interesting about this is that what we see from many drinks from near and soon after that time is that they begin using Old Tom gin. And so Tom Collins makes sense, Old Tom, this all fits. So we can be pretty clear that a Tom Collins was a variant of a gin punch, a single serve long gin punch made with Old Tom. What about the predecessor, the John Collins? Now again, we don't have any original recipes, but again, it's pretty clear it was some sort of a long gin punch. But it would have been made with Hollands gin, the predecessor to Tom gin and dry gin, etc. Hollands or Ginevra or Genever, depending on where you're from and which language you speak, which is a much maltier, richer spirit, often aged, has a little bit of a whiskey-like vibe to it. And so in the 20th century, it was often common for a John Collins to refer to a whiskey-based Collins drink, with a Tom Collins referring to a gin-based Collins drink, whether that was Old Tom or dry gin. The IBA, however, tells us that a John Collins is made with dry gin and a Tom Collins is made with Tom gin. I don't think that makes sense. John Collins as a dry gin drink, which we are going to make this time because it's the IBA spec, just isn't, to me, that similar to a John Collins, right? Whiskey and Hollands both have age, both have malt, both have lots of things in common that dry gin just doesn't have. So to me, dry gin should be a call on a Collins, whereas a John Collins should be either something like a Ginevra or something like a whiskey, while a Tom Collins should be Old Tom. All right, with those nomenclature things out of the way, what is the drink? Well, the drink is very simple. It is gin, some sort of sweetness element, lemon, and some soda water. And that's it. And if you watch the channel, you'll know that I believe 2 weeks ago we made the gin fizz. Those are identical elements. And yes, this drink has identical elements in it. So what's the difference? Well, the difference is size and how you drink it. So as I said, this is a variant of a punch, and punch is an episode we should do a whole episode on at some point. Punches were common for a long time, well before the rise of cocktails and mixed drinks. And punches, of course, as the name implies, like you're thinking of a punch bowl or something, that was the traditional way to make them in large batches, and then you'd serve them into glasses. Over time, some punches began being made individually or for just one or two people and then split. And some of these things were called tall punches. And those are essentially the predecessor of our modern long drinks. And that is the lineage where this John Collins comes out of. So it's something that was thought of as just a single serving punch before the concept of having another name for that really existed. And so because of that, originally there wouldn't have been any ice in this. This would have been something that you would have used cold water for and then built right in the glass. Those are two hallmarks of punch tradition. Now, over time in America, ice became very plentiful, more so than it had been in England in 1830, say. And so when people started making these long punches, it became very common to pop some ice in there. And that does a couple things, but the biggest one is that means it stays cold. And so you're able to have a longer drink, a taller drink, right? More ice in it, and it's a sipper, as opposed to a fizz, which you're shaking first and then straining without ice. So it's cold when it comes out, but it's not going to stay that way. So a fizz, you're going to drink quicker. It's going to be a much shorter drink. A Collins, you're going to sip it. It's going to be a longer drink. That's essentially the difference, and that's why in the fizz episode we discussed how with a fizz, you can go crazy and add in egg whites and cream and all sorts of fruit and whatever you want to do. Because you're shaking it, you have that power. In a Collins, you don't. We're going to build this in the glass over ice, so you only want to add things that are going to dissolve readily in that environment. All right, final complaint, and then we're going to get into making two different variants. The IBA recipe, as well as most modern recipes I see, are too short. So a Collins glass, which is actually a thing going back to the 1860s at least, if not the 1850s, is a big glass. They were 12 to 16 ounces, maybe even a little bit more. The IBA spec does not allow for us to approach that. I mean, we could, but then the glass would just be empty, or we'd have to fill it with like shaved ice to make up the volume. So we will make the IBA version as spec. I'm going to use those same little highball glasses I was using in the fizz episode. But then we're going to do a twist, or a different version of a Collins, and I'm going to use a bit of a bigger glass and see if we can get some classic proportions. All right, I'm finally done saying words. Let's go ahead and get some ice and we'll start building IBA spec Collins. Okay, for the IBA spec Collins, we're going to start by throwing some ice in the glass here. And then we are going to go in with some lemon. I again have lemons that are just unbelievably large. I'm hoping that this side of this one will fit in here enough to work. I am sorely underestimating that. All right, yep, that's not gonna work. Oh yeah, that's a thing. All right, so we are going to want 30 milliliters, that's about 1 ounce of giant lemon juice. we're gonna want 15 milliliters, that's about half an ounce, of our sugar syrup, simple syrup. This is a 2-to-1. Then we're gonna want 45 milliliters, that's an ounce and a half, of a London dry gin, per the IBA. We're using Bombay Classic. That juniper smell as you pour it, lovely. And then we need our soda water. Don't worry, I still have some of Kroger's Best from that fizz episode. And here we want 60 milliliters or 2 ounces. And you know what, we'll throw one more ice cube in there. All right, then we're gonna give that just a nice stir in the glass to combine. Shouldn't take much stirring since we use simple and not granulated sugar. And then for a garnish, we want a slice of lemon with a maraschino cherry. Just like that. And that is an IBA spec John Collins. And as you can see, this is not a 16-ounce glass, and it still ain't full. So I still believe that I am correct on the proportion thing, but I think it's gonna taste all right. Yeah, very good. It's very mild. I mean, it's not miles away from the fizzes that we made. Nice amount of lemon, nice amount of sweetness. Still has a very sort of lemonade-y vibe to it. With the big garnish of the lemon wheel, I do get a lot more citrus on the nose, which affects how I'm perceiving it taste-wise. Yeah, I do get some gin at the end. Partially that's gin selection. I believe in the fizz we used aviation. Bombay is definitely drier, definitely has a stronger juniper component. About halfway through the drink, as the citrus starts to wane a little bit, I get that juniper. I get it as heat in the back of my throat, in a good way, not in a cheap alcohol burn kind of way, but in a warm juniper, warm spices sort of heat. Yeah, it's really good. It's crisp. It's great for today. It's a very warm day here, and the windows are closed at the moment, so this is very refreshing. I do just want to taste real quickly what the cherry does with the drink. So let's take a sip. Yeah, it's great. You don't need it. It's not adding anything, but it's delicious. Highly recommended. All right, so that's the IBA spec John Collins, which I think is a perfectly great drink, other than that it shouldn't be called a John Collins and it's way too small. All right, for drink number 2, I'd love to make you a Tom Collins, because you know that I love Tom Gin, and that is a great historical version of that drink. But we just did the Old Tom in the Fizz just a couple weeks ago, and it's gonna be very similar again, right? So I don't wanna do that, I don't wanna do the same thing. Also, I mentioned in the Fizz episode, one option you could try if you wanted to try a Fizz with something slightly less standard, but still with a history to it, is to do a tequila Fizz. And so we are gonna do what's often called a Juan Collins. Not sure if that's historically the name, but the idea is that it's a tequila-based Collins, right? And so we are also gonna try to use proportions a little more accurate to 1880-ish. And we're gonna use this ridiculous glass because we're in box set glass mode the past couple weeks. This came with a bottle of El Jimador about 8 years ago. So for the Juan Collins, we start with our much bigger glass. This is a little bit more than a 16-ounce glass, nice amount of ice. And we are gonna start off with half a lemon, which, how much is half a lemon? Who knows? Certainly on this lemon, that could mean anything. That's still not gonna fit in there. Let's see what we get out of a quarter of this. Let's go from there. If you're wondering if I'm regretting not grabbing the Reamer juicer like I did the past couple times I had giant lemons, yes, I am regretting that. All right, so we have about an ounce, about 30 milliliters of the lemon juice. We want 2 ounces of our base spirit, 60 milliliters. In this case, this bottle of Cazadores that is years old that I have not been willing to finish because I love this old ugly bottle, and I don't like the newer, fancier bottle. But I decided we'd pull it out for this. I haven't had Cazadores in ages. 60 milliliters of that. And then for sweetener, we're gonna actually use agave nectar just because that kind of makes sense with the tequila vibe. So we are gonna put in, just put in about that much. That's a good amount. And then this time for our soda water, we want quite a bit more. We wanna get at least 6 ounces of soda water into this. So the earliest recipes call for 1 bottle of soda water. And at that time, soda water would have come in a few different size bottles, but the smallest one would have been right around 6 ounces. And so that would be 120 milliliters. Great. So we're gonna give that a nice stir. This will take a little more stirring because of the agave nectar. Alright, so we got it mostly combined. There's still a little bit of extra nectar on the bottom, but that's okay. I like what it's doing color-wise. And we're just going to serve it with a little fan of lemon wedges here to get some nice citrus on the nose. And that is sort of an old school spec of a Juan Collins. Oh, that's really nice. So it's really bright. The tequila is actually just playing into that brightness category. You do get a little bit of its spice qualities. You get a little bit of clove. You get maybe a little bit of something dark, like a leather or something like that. But mostly, you get its bright spots, the agave spots, just coming through with the lemon, and it's just very bright. Only a little bit of sweetness because the agave nectar isn't that sweet and it's not fully dissolved, but that's okay here. We don't need a ton of sweetness. It's lemon juice and tequila. Those play great. It's fairly diluted because of the amount of club soda. So other than being obviously totally the wrong spirit and wrong sweetener, this is very much what a 1980 John or Tom Collins would have been. And yeah, it's great. Is it better than the other one? I don't know. I'd say that if we had made that a Tom Collins, if we had done Old Tom and otherwise used those proportions and everything, that's pretty good. That'd be hard to beat. But comparing tequila to gin, that's just a difficult exercise. It'd be like asking someone to pick a favorite child. So thanks so much for coming along on this Collins adventure for the week. Whether you want to make a John Collins, a real John Collins with whiskey or Ginebra, or you'd like to make a Tom Collins or a Juan Collins, go for it. You can make other Collinses too. People sometimes make a vodka Collins. I'm not clear on what that really is. It's basically a vodka soda. It doesn't sound good, but you can do it if you'd like. You could also make it with other things. I have heard of folks making brandy Collinses and things. Give a try to whatever works for you. But thanks for checking out these Collinses with me this week. Please do all the YouTube type things that I'm obligated to ask for, like likes, shares, subscribes, and bell ringing. You can go ahead and check out the blog at shakingandsipping.com. We do a write-up on each drink, and we also do additional write-ups on when we ask for some of these drinks in local bars and see what variants they do and similar things like that. I'm also on Twitter at shaking_sipping. You're welcome to follow me there. Nothing too exciting, but good old Twitter update type stuff. So that is all my plugging for this week. We'll be back next week for the next IBA cocktail. And until then, happy sipping. Cheers.